It's an honor to be invited to come speak with you. When I met Roma at the Roth conference, I couldn't wait for the invitation to come and speak. I've heard about the great work this organization is doing, and I think it's so important to be capturing the experiences of those of us in the corporate world who are trying to do it all, trying to do the right thing, and it feels really good to be recognized for some of the work we're doing. So I want to take just a couple of minutes and explain the company, what we're doing, and the context in which this. I think this, for me personally, I've been in politics and government for a long time, and I've been through a lot of chaos. I've been through a lot of a lot of crises, and out of those crises, sometimes really good things happen because you're in a crisis. And right now, I feel like I've been given the opportunity of a lifetime to do something really impactful. And I honestly believe that access to clean water is going to be the single most dangerous crisis that the world faces in the next 10 years. Because of what's happening with climate and with our infrastructure. I'm going to start with this just overview and connect the tissues between, I know this water that is in the ocean, water that is in comes from your faucet, water that is in the rivers and the snowpack. There's a reason why they call planet Earth the water planet. 70% of the surface of our planet is water, and it starts in the ocean, and it is an inevitable march back to the ocean. And the life on our planet is completely dependent on and dictated by the movement of water between the oceans, the atmosphere, the snowpacks, the rivers on its way back to the ocean. Our entire civilization has been designed around the hydrological cycle. And what is happening because of climate change is the hydrological cycle has been shattered. If you look back at the variability between drought and wet years since recorded history, there's been a pretty predictable pattern with even incorporating outliers for major snow events and epic rain events and droughts. It still patterns out to be fairly predictable. And if you look since about 1980, this in California in particular, this is a California chart, and it's happened around the world. The first, what we call the whiplash event, was in the 1978, 1979, went drought from extreme drought to extreme rain events in 1 year. And since then, the variability has been off the charts, and it goes from extremes to extremes in a matter of months. And so what's very challenging about that is that the patterns are, you can't build infrastructure around these patterns. 4 years ago, we were in the worst drought in 1,200 years. And then literally months later, we had so much snow that they had to release water from our reservoirs because of the massive flooding, and it lasted throughout the year. So this is an infrastructure problem. It is not a supply problem. It's very important to understand we have the same amount of water on the planet today that we have had for 4 billion years. The amount of water on the planet does not change. Doesn't sneak off into space, doesn't evaporate into space. It literally just changes form. We don't have a water supply problem. We have a water infrastructure problem. The water infrastructure around the world was actually designed, by the Egyptians and the Chinese and the Romans, and the open air aqueducts moving water, for hundreds of miles away from where it is naturally stored in the snowpacks to where people can consume it, is basically open air canals and hundreds of miles of pipelines. I bet you can't tell which of these were built by the Romans and which of these were built by the Californians. But everything changed in terms of infrastructure. The calling card for us in the U.S. was the Hurricane Katrina that just destroyed the levees in Louisiana, and that became the first huge whiplash event that where water, basically became the most destructive force on Earth, and it started taking it took out the levees and wiped out half of New Orleans. And since then, you've seen story after story after story of our infrastructure being inundated and beginning to collapse. You're talking about dirt levees, you're talking about concrete and steel rebar and rocks, and these are the types of infrastructure that don't hold up well over with extreme weather. And so you have the kind of problem that you have is one that has one major storm can have the kind of impact on millions, tens of millions of people. This was the scariest headline I saw as someone who worked in state government in California, was the aqueduct that brings water to Southern California failed in several parts. We have 400 miles of that aqueduct, and every single linear foot is a single point of failure, that where the next storm could actually take out the water supply for most of Los Angeles. The bigger problem that we have, more immediate problem that we have, is that because the hydrology has changed so dramatically, it's now not falling as snow in the upper elevations in the mountains. It's falling as atmospheric rivers in the central and southern part of the state. It's not falling where we have reservoirs to be able to capture the snow melt. It's falling in areas where all of our systems were designed to steer storm water out to the ocean. And for all of our, trillions of dollars of infrastructure, flood control systems, urban flood control systems were built around the 100-year flood. In New York, it was most urban areas is the 30-year flood zone. Now you're seeing the kind of storms where people are kayaking in the subways of New York, right? Well, that storm surge we do not have the capacity to capture it, harness it, and safely repurpose that water so it can be used for human consumption, but it's carrying everything on the surface out to the ocean. And it's trillions of dollars in infrastructure to be able to just prevent this problem, let alone fix it. So who is Cadiz? What is Cadiz? We own 45,000 acres of land in the Mojave Desert, out in San Bernardino, right at the corner of Arizona, California, and Nevada. We are the largest farming operation out there. We've had the founders of the company identified this water resource under the land in the 1980s using NASA satellite imaging, and they developed the farming operation right at this spot called Fenner Gap, which I'll introduce you to. But we have developed over the last 30 years very unique assets, and they're very sustainably integrated, and we've grown those assets and integrated those assets into what I believe is a very sustainably, holistically centered business model with very sustainably integrated assets. We have 2.5 million acre feet of water supply under our current permits. We have the capacity to store 1 million acre feet of river water, surface water in the aquifer for during droughts. We have pipelines, hundreds of miles of pipeline assets that we've been repurposing from fossil fuels to be able to use them for water. We have a treatment technology where we have filter technology that we can install to treat iron, manganese, arsenic, nitrates, chromium-6. We just signed a deal to be able to treat forever chemicals. And the land itself, in addition to our farming, we're using it to grow crops, but we're also growing native seeds, which the climate has really made native seed development very challenging. But we're also building. We're signed an agreement to build the largest green hydrogen production facility at Cadiz Ranch. Because we can use our own water to crack the hydrogen, to crack the hydrocarbons to create the hydrogen. We have all the land for solar, and we're very well located at the corner of the Southwest Gas Network to be able to transport and use that, make that green hydrogen available for other businesses besides our own, so we can operate very sustainably. So where we're located here is the map that's, I think it's also behind my head. The mountain range that is above Cadiz Ranch is a 2,000 square mile watershed system. That's 2,000 square miles is half the size of Los Angeles County, right? At the top of the watershed is the New York Mountains at 7,500-foot elevation. You can also see the Providence Mountains there. That's 7,200-foot elevation. And then at the bottom of the aquifer, where you see the blue is Cadiz Ranch. That's located at a place called Fenner Gap. This closed basin system, all the water has one exit point, and it's through Fenner Gap, right across where our ranch is. That's 900-foot elevation. So this is a 2,000 square mile bathtub on its side in Southern California, and it's one of the best kept secrets in water because it's all underground. But this is the one area of Southern California that is not in the rain shadow of the Sierra Nevada mountains or the San Gabriel Mountains. And so unlike the other parts of the Mojave Desert and the other deserts, we actually get 1 million acre feet of precipitation annually in this watershed, and it's increasing, not decreasing. Unlike the snowpacks you see in the Rockies and in Northern California, the climate change is pushing the rain down south. We get Gulf storms. So we had Hurricane Hillary came in and dropped a bunch of water, took out Route 66 and took out all the roads and bridges. So it's it's a great area to capture water. The pipeline assets include the dotted line on the blue that says Southern Pipeline. We purchased a right-of-way along an existing railroad. So the Arizona-California Railroad is one of two railroads rail lines that cross our property. So we're building the pipeline system within the existing right-of-way. So there's no new disturbed land that will connect us to the Colorado River Aqueduct, which is the major artery that feeds Southern California from the Colorado River and Lake Mead. On the blue line that is the Northern Pipeline. That is was a pipeline that was built for oil 35 years ago by American Oil, and it would connect the Santa Barbara oil refineries, the offshore oil fields to McCamey, Texas, where the refineries were. And during the gas boom, when El Paso Natural Gas bought the whole 1,300-mile line, they retired this section of the pipe, this 220-mile section of the pipe, and they built a connector and went adjacent to it. But so we purchased the idle pipeline. It's steel. It's already in the ground. It's in very good shape, and we clean it and build the pumping stations. And now we can use an existing fossil fuel pipeline and convert it to carry water to reach these areas of the desert that they're it's a wonderful place to live, high growth areas, military bases, but they're fairly low income, rural, and they don't have access to water right now. Without our pipeline's not in service right now. They are dependent on pumping water all the way from Northern California down through the State Water Project and then up down into the like Barstow area and the Antelope Valley area. They're entirely dependent on pumping water from the Sierra Nevada mountains for their survival. So this is our pipelines and our water resources being right in their backyard. We're actually making this water available to these communities. That is going to be their future. To dive in just a little bit to understand how incredible this is and how we're using the sustainability of the asset. This is the watershed, as you can see, and right below where our property is, you can see what are called the dry lakes. These are naturally the lowest point in the entire basin, and all of the water that slips out of the watershed across our ranch goes about 3 or 4 miles down to the dry lakes where it comes to the surface and evaporates. So every drop of water that we use for agriculture, every drop of water that we are able to intercept and and transport before it evaporates is new water supply. So it's the only new water supply in the entire Colorado River Basin. we are, as I mentioned, this is a aerial shot of our farm out in the desert, and we have and the lower left it gives you an idea of how close we are to the gas network. So we're able to use our property to develop clean hydrogen, green hydrogen, and we'll use that to help power our well fields. We'll use that to help make all of the farming operations zero emission over time, and be able to make this hydrogen available to other centers throughout the Southwest. The ATEC systems I already mentioned they're very versatile. So we can a lot of the contaminants that you're seeing today, they can only be addressed by these very, very large companies that are building up utility size treatment systems built by the utility industry. But millions of people, are in small communities, small wells, and they have no access to technology that can clean their water except the filter they use at their tap. So we found this technology, and we acquired the company about 3 years ago, and they can scale down. So we're actually installing them for free at one of the reservations that one of the tribes we're working with down near the Salton Sea, and we're working with these farm worker communities to put in these systems. They can also scale up as well. So what we're doing with our groundwater bank is it's serving as the centerpiece, the backbone of a water network that we're putting together, where we're providing the water, we're providing the storage, we're providing the pipeline, the financing, and the treatment technology with all of the communities that we touch in the area. And so we're investing in a network of groundwater banks that can most efficiently utilize all sources of water. If you haven't heard of the One Water concept, it was generated in the wastewater industry, and it's the concept that there aren't different kinds of water. It's recycled water or imported water, surface water, storm water capture. There's one water, and you have to build the infrastructure to be able to manage water supplies as a holistic endeavor. Otherwise, you're building billions and billions of dollars in infrastructure in order to channel one supply of water hundreds of miles, from the mountains, passing all of these disadvantaged communities to fill swimming pools in the urban areas. And the network you've built is exclusive. I mean, these communities out in the rural areas, they can't afford to build separate infrastructure. So what we're doing is actually creating a one water concept over hundreds of miles in Southern California, where we're sharing resources with these disadvantaged communities, and we're providing the financing and the water and the treatment, and building these integrated facilities throughout this part of Southern California. The last 2 points, we actually purchased the Keystone XL. There was 180 miles of steel from the abandoned Keystone XL project, and thankfully we completed that acquisition before the end of the year. Little did we know that it would be the most important decision we made, because if we were stuck in the tariff wars right now, I think this project would not be able to be financed for another 5 years. But we'll be reusing the Keystone pipeline as part of that network to build to the southern pipeline. And then I think the real pivot point came for us last year when we were approached by a very large Native American tribe about investing in the water assets, investing in the groundwater bank, and becoming owners, equity investors in the bank. And it just changed everything about the way we're approaching the project. Private companies don't build water projects. I mean, that's done usually by the utilities. There's not a lot of space for the water for a private sector investment in the water world. And so we were struggling for a long time to identify because our cost of capital is too high, right? The water would be too expensive. Public agencies that can access low cost of capital, and they can access a lot of the infrastructure grant funding that's out there that the government, federal and state, local governments put forth, private companies can't. And so when we were approached by a tribe about being our equity investor, it just kind of blew the whole the doors off it, and made it was a great pivot point. The tribes are the perfect public partners in this partnership, and by having these disadvantaged communities and the tribes as the owners and the equity investors, I'm now able to bring in hundreds of millions of dollars in private equity under the tribes, alongside the tribes. And so now we have a very cost-effective investor strategy that can access all the low cost of capital and put private sector capital to work in the water infrastructure industry. My last point on this is to say that the utility business model is broken. I mean, there is $1 trillion worth of infrastructure investment that is critical, mission critical to make in the US alone, just to manage our water resources so that our communities can survive. The entire electric grid needs to be rebuilt. Climate change is taking out the electric grid. There's not a chance that the utility business model can provide that investment, because the ratepayers can't pay for it, and you need infrastructure in parts that don't have wealthy communities with tax bases to pay for it. So this business model, where we're partnering with the very disadvantaged communities that haven't had access with private sector investment, is, I think, going to be a shattering change in the way we finance water infrastructure, and it can be replicated in the electric industry as well. So I'm very, very proud of the work we're doing, and I think it's a replicable business model that I hope to share a lot broader in California in the not too distant future.